Welcome to Lukebook Money, built for Singapore. Today, a food delivery rider with no CPF, who quietly saved $250,000. Here's the real story. Quick favor before we start. If you're new to Tiger Brokers, just tap the link in my description below, or key in the code on your screen when you sign up. We both earn $90, and it quietly keeps these daily videos free. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. It's past 11 at night at a void deck Kopitiam. A man in his late 30s sets down a thermal delivery bag, orders a kopi, and opens his banking app. The number that quietly stares back at him is about $250,000. His name, for our story, is Rizal. 11 hours on the road today, ferrying other people's dinners across the island, and this is his own quiet moment with a hot kopi and a cold, astonishing figure. Now, be honest with yourself. When you picture someone with $250,000 saved, do you picture a food delivery rider? Most of us don't, and that gap is exactly what this episode is about. Rizal is in his late 30s. No degree, no office, no company name on a lanyard. He rents a single room in an HDB flat and writes for a living, in the sun and in the rain. Here's the part that really matters. As a self-employed gig worker, Rizal gets no automatic employer CPF. Nobody is quietly setting aside a slice of his pay for his old age. Not the platform, not a boss, nobody. For most Singaporeans, CPF is the safety net you barely notice. Every payday, money flows into your accounts for retirement, for housing, for healthcare, whether you think about it or not. It's automatic, and that's the whole magic of it. Look at a typical employee to feel the contrast. Take someone on Singapore's median full-time wage, around $5,500 a month in 2024. Every month, CPF just happens for them. On that pay, 20% comes out of the employee's own share, and the employer adds another 17% on top. That's 37% of the wage funneled into their future, month after month, without a single decision. Rizal gets none of that 17% gift, and none of the automatic 20% either. For him, every dollar of retirement, every dollar of healthcare buffer, has to be a choice he makes on purpose, from tired hands, after a long shift. So how does a man with no employer CPF end up with $250,000? That's the real question. Not how he got lucky. How he built his own CPF, from scratch, over roughly 10 years. What it is instead is discipline and time. A boring, repeatable system, run for 10 years without flinching. The kind of thing that sounds unglamorous right up until you see the number it produces. Now an important, honest caveat before we go further. Rizal is a composite, an illustrative rider stitched together from real Singapore patterns, not one documented person. And every figure you hear is rounded and illustrative, chosen to teach the idea, not to audit a real bank account. I also won't pretend gig life is romantic. It's brutally hard, no paid leave, no medical benefits, no bonus. Weather, traffic, a bad back, an accident. Any of them can zero your income overnight, with nothing to catch you. So this is not a story that says quit your job and write. It's a story about a mechanism. About what you do when the safety net isn't handed to you, and you have to weave it yourself. Because that's the true line of this whole episode. When the safety net isn't automatic, you must build your own, one deliberate piece at a time, and then let time do the heavy lifting. Over the next parts, we'll walk through exactly what he did, step by step. His own MediSave and CPF flaw. A boring cash core. A slow index engine. And ruthless control of the big costs that eat riders alive. And here is the quiet punchline waiting at the end. The man the system gave no automatic CPF built a bigger, more deliberate safety net than the system would have handed most people for free. So finish your kopi with Rizal and stay with me. Because the story of that $250,000 isn't about a rider who got lucky. It's about a system anyone watching could choose to run. So before we get to the $250,000, we have to sit with the hard part. Because gig life is not a hack, and it is not freedom the way the ads make it look. It is a job with the safety net quietly cut away. Picture two riders standing side by side at the void deck. One is an office worker, one is Rizal. They earn similar money each month, but one of them is carried by a system, and the other is carrying himself. Start with the thing every employee takes for granted. Paid leave. When you fall sick, you still get paid, and the office keeps running. For Rizal, there is no such button. Every hour he does not ride is simply zero. No shift, no dollars. Rest is not paid, recovery is not paid, and a slow afternoon is not paid. The meter only moves when the wheels move. Now look at how the income actually swings. 2 weeks, same rider, same effort, wildly different pay. This is illustrative and rounded, but any rider will tell you the shape is real. That good week feels great. Long hours, good weather, surge pricing, and the app is buzzing. It is easy to believe the money will always come like this. Then the sky opens, or the bag gives out, and the same week collapses to a third. Nobody tops up the difference. There is no manager approving your medical leave. And that swing is not a rare event. It is the normal texture of the job, month after month. Which is why a rider cannot budget off a good week. He has to budget off a bad one. Then there are the risks that do not show up on a payslip at all. Rain that turns a junction slick, traffic that does not see a bike, and a body that has to keep going in whether an office never feels. One bad fall, one slip disc, one risk that will not turn the throttle, and the income does not just dip. It goes to zero overnight, with nothing automatic underneath to catch him. His body is not just how he works. His body is the income. When it stops, the money stops, and unlike a machine at a factory, there is no one to service it for free. Now here is the deeper cost, the one most people never see. It is not just the leave or the bonus he misses. It is the whole quiet machinery of CPF that hums along behind every employee. Think about what CPF actually does for a salaried Singaporean, automatically, without them lifting a finger. It quietly builds 3 different safety nets at once, every single month. First, retirement. A slice of every salary is diverted into CPF, growing at around 2.5% in the ordinary account and roughly 4% in the special account, compounding for decades before you can touch it. Second, healthcare. MediSave quietly fills up in the background, ready for hospital bills and insurance premiums, so a health scare does not become a financial disaster. For a rider, that buffer is the closest thing to medical benefits he will ever get. And third, maybe the most underrated of all. Forced discipline. The money is taken before you ever see it, so you never get the chance to spend what was meant for your future self. For an employee, all 3 of those happen silently, whether they think about money or not. For Rizal, all 3 simply do not exist unless he builds them himself, by hand, every month. And that is the whole mechanism of this episode. The safety net an office worker gets for free, a rider has to consciously recreate, brick by brick, out of his own lumpy income. So the surprise is not that a rider got lucky. It is that a man with no automatic net chose to build a better one on purpose. In the next part, we start where he started, with MediSave and his own CPF. So here is where the story turns from problem to plan. If Rizal has no employer quietly building his CPF, then Rizal must build it himself, brick by deliberate brick. And the very first brick is the one the system actually still forces on him. Here is something most people don't realize about gig workers. Even with no boss and no payslip, a self-employed rider in Singapore still touches CPF. Once his net trade income crosses the threshold, MediSave contributions are compulsory, not optional. So each year, when Rizal declares what he earned after his bike costs and expenses, CPF works out a MediSave amount he owes. It scales with his income. In a good year he pays more, in a lean year less, but he always pays. Now, what does that MediSave money actually buy him? It is a locked healthcare account, and it underpins his MediShield life coverage. For a rider with no company insurance, that is the closest thing he has to a medical benefit built into the national system. Think about why that matters for someone like him. His body is his income. One bad accident, one long hospital stay, and without a healthcare buffer it could wipe him out. MediSave and MediShield Life are the wall between a scary week and a ruined life. But Rizal didn't stop at what he was forced to pay. The system lets self-employed people go further, with voluntary CPF top-ups. He looked at that not as a burden, but as a door most riders never bother to open. Here is the key idea. An employee's CPF splits 3 ways, into the ordinary account, the special account, and the MediSave account. But if Rizal just makes a general voluntary contribution, it gets divided across all 3 in fixed statutory ratios. He cannot simply pour it all into the special account. So to grow the retirement bucket on purpose, he uses a dedicated tool, a retirement sum topping up cash top-up, straight into his special account. Why bother? The ordinary account pays about 2.5%, but the special account earns a floor of about 4%, reviewed regularly, plus extra interest on your first savings. And those cash top-ups hand him income tax relief on top. That gap sounds small on paper. 1.5%, so what? But for money he genuinely will not touch for 20 or 30 years, the extra percentage point compounds into something enormous. Time turns a tiny edge into a mountain. Let me show you roughly what a higher rate does over a long stretch. Picture the same modest sum growing at 2.5% versus around 4%. The 2 lines start together and then quietly, relentlessly, pull apart. There is another quiet feature of CPF that works in his favor as he ages. The way contributions are allocated shifts over the years. When you're young, more flows to the ordinary account for housing. As you get older, more is steered toward retirement. The whole point of feeding that retirement bucket is to hit a target. CPF frames it as a ladder of retirement sums. There is a basic sum, a full sum, and an enhanced sum, and the higher you climb, the bigger your monthly payout later. That payout comes through CPF Life, a national annuity that pays you every month for as long as you live. The timeline is fixed and worth memorizing. From age 55 you can withdraw within limits, and from 65 the CPF Life payouts begin. So for Rizal, every RSTU top-up into that special account is really $1 reaching forward to his 65-year-old self, at least up to the full retirement sum he is allowed to top up to. It's buying future monthly income that he cannot outlive. That reframing changed everything about how he treated the money. Here is the mindset shift, and honestly it is the heart of this whole part. Rizal stopped treating these top-ups as spare change, something you do only if there's money left over. He started treating them as a bill. A bill he owes his future self, due every single month. And that word deliberate is the difference between him and most gig workers. An office worker gets CPF automatically, whether they think about it or not. Rizal gets nothing automatically, so he made a system that does it on purpose, on a schedule, no willpower required. Now a fair warning. These top-ups lock your money away for the long haul, so you only send in what you genuinely won't need for decades. That's exactly why the next layer matters, the cash you can actually reach. We'll build that in the next part. So that's layer 1. A compulsory MediSave that guards his health, and RSTU top-ups to his special account quietly compounding near that 4% floor toward a real retirement base. The safety net that wasn't automatic, he started weaving with his own 2 hands. So Rizal has started building his own CPF floor. But before he put a single dollar into any index fund, he did something that sounds boring, sounds almost too simple. He built a wall of cash first. Here is the real enemy for a gig worker. It is not a market crash. It is a bad month arriving at exactly the wrong time, forcing you to sell your investments at the bottom just to eat and pay rent. Think about how that plays out. The market dips 15%, and that same week Rizal gets a fever, or the bike breaks down, or it rains for 5 days straight. With no cash, he is forced to sell his index fund chip to survive. That single act, selling good assets in a panic, is what quietly destroys most people's wealth. Rizal's whole cash system exists for one reason only: to make sure that moment never, ever happens to him. So the first tier is the emergency buffer. Plain, boring savings, sitting in an instant access account he can tap the same day. Nothing fancy, nothing locked up. Just money that is always there. Now, an office worker might keep 3 months of expenses. Rizal keeps more, because his life is lumpier. He has no sick pay, no paid leave, no boss topping him up when he is hurt. Every off day is simply zero income. So he aims for something closer to 6 months of expenses in cash. It is not there to grow. It is there so that a broken wrist, or a slow rainy stretch, is an inconvenience and not a disaster. Once that emergency cash is full, he does not just let the rest sit in a savings account earning almost nothing. He builds a second tier. This is where Singapore savings bonds come in. Singapore savings bonds are about as safe as money gets in Singapore. Backed by the government, capital guaranteed, meaning the amount he puts in cannot shrink. And he can get his money back any month if he really needs it. But here is the clever part, the bit that makes it a system. He does not buy one big lump. He staggers them. This is what people call laddering. Imagine buying a chunk of bonds every few months. Each one is a rung on the ladder. Because they were bought at different times, a fresh chunk is always coming due and becoming available cash. So money is always rolling. If a rung matures and he is fined, he just reinvests it into a new rung. If he is not fined, that cash is right there waiting, no need to touch anything risky. And the return on this money is modest, roughly 2.5% to 3%, depending on rates at the time. That is illustrative, and it moves. Nobody gets rich on savings bonds, and that is entirely the point. There is a close cousin here too, the Treasury bill. Also government-backed, usually a short 6 months or a year, and often a handy alternative for parking cash you know you won't need for a little while. The key thing to hold in your head is what this borrowing money is for. It is not the growth engine. It is not trying to beat the market. It is the shock absorber. When a rainy week wipes out his earnings, he spends from the buffer. When an injury scare hits, a bond rung is maturing. The risky money, the index fund, is never disturbed. It just keeps compounding through the storm. So picture the whole structure as a pyramid. At the base, instant cash for emergencies. Above it, the savings bond and T-bill ladder for safe, rolling reserves. And only on top of that solid base does he let himself take real risk. Because this cash core is what lets Rizal stay calm and stay invested for 10 straight years. The buffer buys him the one thing every long-term investor actually needs: the ability to not flinch. And that is where the real engine begins. So the cash core keeps him steady. But cash alone does not build $250,000. There has to be an engine underneath. Let me show you exactly what it was. Here is the anticlimax. There was no hot stock, no crypto moonshot, no secret tip from a friend at the coffee shop. The engine was almost embarrassingly boring: a fixed sum, every single month, into one broad global index fund. A global index fund simply means he owns a tiny slice of thousands of companies all over the world, all at once. He is not betting on one winner. He is betting that the world, on average, keeps building things over the decades. Why not pick his own stocks? Because after an 11-hour shift in the rain, Rizal has no time and no spare mental energy to study company accounts. He needs an investment that works while he sleeps, not one that demands his attention every day. The method has a name: dollar cost averaging. It just means you invest the same fixed amount on a schedule, no matter what the market is doing that week. Up, down, sideways, you buy the same slice, automatically. Here is the quiet magic of it. When prices are high, your fixed sum buys fewer units. When prices crash, that same sum buys more units on sale. You are automatically buying more when it is cheap, without having to be clever about it. And that removes the single most expensive habit in investing, trying to time the market. Waiting for the perfect moment to buy. Almost nobody gets that right, and the waiting itself costs you years of growth. So Rizal set up a standing instruction from his bank. A fixed amount leaves his account on the same day each month and buys the fund. He never has to decide. He never has to feel brave. It just happens. There is one more thing that matters more than most people think: fees. A fund that quietly charges you 2% a year, versus one that charges a fraction of that, can eat a huge chunk of your final pot over a decade. That is why he chose low cost and broadly diversified over clever and expensive. Every dollar not paid in fees stays invested, working for him. Boring, cheap, and wide beats exciting, costly, and narrow, over the long run. Now, a bonus lever most gig workers never touch. It is called a Supplementary Retirement Scheme, or SRS. Think of it as a special account that rewards you at tax time for saving toward retirement. You can put in up to $15,300 a year, and that amount is taken off your taxable income. So if Rizal has a strong year, topping up SRS lowers his tax bill and grows his retirement pot at the same time. And the money inside SRS does not just sit there as cash. He invests it into the same kind of low-cost global fund. So it is doing double duty, cutting his tax today, and quietly compounding for tomorrow. Now let me be honest about what this engine is not. It is not fast. In year one, it feels like nothing is happening. You put money in, the market wobbles, and your balance barely moves. Most people quit right here. But compounding is patient. The early years plant the seed. The later years are where the growth on your growth starts to snowball, and suddenly the numbers move faster than the money you are putting in. Notice what the edge actually is here. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is behavior, staying consistent, keeping costs low, and giving it enough time to work. Anyone can do those three things. I want to say this clearly, once. This is education, not financial advice, and not a recommendation to buy or sell anything. Rizal is a composite rider, the figures are rounded and illustrative, and I am naming no specific fund, bond, or platform. So copy the mechanism, not the man and not any particular product. A fixed monthly sum. A broad, cheap, global fund. Tax relief where it fits. And the patience to leave it alone through every rainy week. That is the growth engine. Quiet, automatic, unglamorous. But an engine is only half the story. The other half is how much fuel you feed it, and that comes down to the cost eating riders alive. That is next. So we have seen how Rizal grows his money. But there is a quieter half to this whole story, and it is the one most riders miss completely. He does not just earn well, he keeps well. Here is the thing about being your own boss on a bike. Every dollar of expense comes straight out of your own pocket, because there is no company cut, no reimbursement, no finance department quietly absorbing the cost. What you spend is simply what you do not save. But Rizal learned something important early. You do not get ahead by giving up your morning kopi or feeling guilty over a $5 hawker lunch. The small treats are noise. The real leaks are big, recurring, and boring. So he attacks the big rocks instead. For a delivery rider, there are really just a handful of large costs that repeat month after month, and if you control those few, the savings rate almost sorts itself out. Start with the biggest one, the ride itself. This is where so many riders quietly sabotage themselves, signing up for a shiny new e-bike on a long installment plan that eats their earnings every single month before they have delivered a single order. Rizal does the opposite. He buys a sensible, reliable ride that he can afford outright or with a small, short loan, and then he maintains it properly, because a well-kept bike costs far less over its life than a flashy one bought on credit. The mindset is simple. The bike is a tool that earns him money, not a toy that shows off status. He wants the cheapest reliable thing that gets the job done, not the nicest thing his loan limit allows. Next comes the phone and the mobile data, and these are genuinely tools of the trade. Without a working phone and a stable connection, the orders simply stop coming, so he does not cheap out to the point of breaking. But he keeps it lean. A solid mid-range phone that lasts a few years and a data plan that covers his real usage, not the top-tier flagship with a plan bundled full of extras he never touches. Then there is fuel or charging, and the food he eats while out on the road. Each of these looks small in a single day, but multiplied across 100 shifts a year, they become a serious recurring cost that is fully within his control. So he plans around them. He charges at home where it is cheapest, he packs food from his HDB kitchen on most days, and he treats the daily DBO lunch as an occasional thing rather than an automatic habit that quietly bleeds $15 a shift. Now, cutting costs does not mean cutting protection. This is the line Rizal will not cross, because his body is his income, and if his body goes down, everything goes down with it. So there are two kinds of insurance he treats as non-negotiable. Personal accident cover, which pays out if an accident stops him riding, and hospitalization cover on top of his MediShield, so a serious medical bill does not wipe out 10 years of saving. These premiums are a cost he is happy to pay, because they protect the very engine that earns everything else. Skipping them to save a little each month is the false economy that has ruined many a rider after one bad accident. What he does skip is the frills. The fancy investment-linked policies dressed up as insurance, the cover for things he does not need, the products a friendly agent pushes that mix protection and returns into one expensive, confusing bundle. Add it all up and a pattern appears. He is generous with a couple of things that truly matter, and quietly ruthless with everything else, and that combination is what lets him save a big slice of every good week. All of these figures, by the way, are rounded and illustrative. And this is the whole point of controlling the big rocks. A high savings rate is not a mystery or a sacrifice of every small joy, it is just the natural result of not overpaying on the 3 or 4 costs that dominate a rider's month. That saved slice is exactly what feeds the machine we built earlier. It is the money that fuels the savings bond ladder, that flows into the monthly index buy, that quietly compounds year after year while he is out riding. The costs he cuts become the growth he keeps. So remember the principle, because it is the humble backbone of the whole story. Do not obsess over your copy. Master the few large, recurring costs, keep the protection your body demands, and let the rest quietly flow into your future. Part 7. 10 years, quietly compounding. Now let us put all the pieces on one table and watch what an ordinary rider built, one boring month at a time. Remember, none of this came from one lucky bet. It came from 4 plain habits, stacked on top of each other, running quietly in the background of a very hard job for about a decade. Piece 1 is the self-built flaw. His compulsory MediSave plus the RSTU cash top-ups he made into his special account became the retirement and healthcare base the system never handed him for free. Piece 2 is the shock absorber. Several months of expenses sitting in instant access savings, backed by a staggered Singapore savings bond ladder, so a rainy week or an injury never forced him to sell in a panic. And piece 3 is the engine. A fixed monthly buy into a low-cost global index fund, dollar cost averaging through good markets and bad, plus a bit of SRS on the side for the tax relief. Here is roughly how the total splits. The biggest slab is the invested index pot, then his CPF and MediSave flaw, and the smallest but most important part, the cash and bonds that kept him calm. So how does a modest monthly sum become this much? The secret is unglamorous. It is time, doing quiet, patient work in the background while you are too tired to even watch it. Picture a rider putting aside a few $100s a month across everything. In the early years it feels like nothing. The numbers are small and the progress is boring. But watch the shape of it over 10 years. The contributions add up in a straight line, then the growth on top starts to bend the curve, until the money is quietly earning more than he can write in a week. And there it is. Around $250,000. A rounded, illustrative figure, built by a man with no degree and no employer ever topping up his retirement. Notice what did the heavy lifting. 3 plain levers, pulling in the same direction, year after year. Ordinary moves, repeated, while time did the quiet compounding. That third lever matters more than people think. There were crashes, scary headlines, months when the pot dropped. He never sold. He just kept buying his fixed amount, and the market recovered while he slept. Now come back to part 1. The office worker with automatic CPF, a steady salary, and a bonus every year. On paper he had every advantage, Rizal did not. Here is the quiet twist of the whole episode. Plenty of higher earners, with the safety net handed to them, save nothing on top and have less security than this rider who had to build everything from scratch. The man with no automatic CPF ended up with a bigger, more deliberate safety net than the system would ever have handed him. Because he chose it, on purpose, one contribution at a time. And this is the part the balance sheet does not show. What that buffer buys is not a fancy condo or a new car. It buys sleep. It means a fever or a fall no longer means catastrophe. It means his family sees a father who is tired but not afraid, and a future that finally feels like it belongs to him. So the surprise from part 1 finally lands. The question was never how did he get lucky. It was how did he build his own CPF from nothing. And now you have seen every step of it. So Rizal is home. Thermal bag by the door of his rented HDB room, kopi going cold, the banking app closed. Before you go and try to become him, let us be honest about what you just watched. Because here is the uncomfortable truth about every story like this. You are only ever shown the rider who made it. The camera never lingers on the ones who fell. For every Rizal, there are many riders who never got this ending. One bad accident. A bag that gave out. A stretch of months where there was simply never a spare dollar to save. That is survivorship. It is not a moral failing to be the rider who could not save. Sometimes the income just is not there, and no amount of discipline squeezes a savings rate out of a month that barely covers rent. And Rizal himself is not a real person you can go and find. He is a composite, an illustration, built from realistic Singapore numbers, so the mechanism is clear. The figures were rounded on purpose. Roughly 250,000 over roughly 10 years. Not an audited bank statement, not a promise, just a shape that shows what the behavior can do. So let me say the important part plainly, once. This is education. It is not financial advice, and it is not a recommendation to buy or sell anything. Rizal is a composite character built from realistic numbers, not one real man, which means you are only ever seeing the riders who made it, not the many who got injured, quit, or never had a spare dollar to save. Copy the behavior, not the person. Pay yourself first. Build your own safety net. Keep your big costs brutally low. Invest simply, and stay in the market for years, not weeks. Not this one fund. Not that one bond. Not the specific app he happened to tap on. Those are just the tools that were handy. The habit is the thing. And notice what was never on the list. No hot stock tip. No crypto moonshot. No secret nobody else knew. Just boring things, done for a very long time. Look at what actually built the pile. Time in the market. A stubbornly high savings rate. And never, ever panic selling when the screen went red. 3 levers, all free to anyone. Here is the part 1 the ordinary Singaporean watching to really hear. Rizal had no degree. No big salary. No automatic employer CPF landing in his account each month. What he had instead was a system, and the patience to run it. That is genuinely all it takes. A set of simple rules, followed on the boring weeks and the frightening ones alike. And you do not start with 250,000. You start with the first small deposit. Everything after that is just the same quiet move, repeated, while the years do the heavy lifting. So my invitation is small on purpose. This month, before you spend a cent of it, move one amount you will not miss into savings. $50. 100. Whatever is honest for you. Then do it again next month. That is it. That is the whole secret, that a rider with no safety net used to build a bigger one than the system would have handed him. Out on the road, Rizal clips in and pushes off, unhurried now, into the evening traffic. Same bike, same HDB block, same cold copy waiting. Only the man on it sleeps differently. If this gave you one idea worth keeping, subscribe and stay with us for the next story. No hype, no tips, just ordinary Singaporeans building quiet security, one patient month at a time. Thanks for riding along. Thanks for watching. If this made building wealth in Singapore a little clearer, give it a like and subscribe to Lukebook so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next one.